Hey, this is John with Brockworks. I was asked to do another video tutorial for SketchUp users on how to create site models for the houses that I model and build. This is a property that for a house I'm getting ready to build here very shortly, and with each job I get my surveyors to provide me, they send me a DWG that has the contours on it. I hire them to do a topo analysis of every site that I build on. So if I was to drop this thing out into perspective, you'll see that these are the topo lines that I receive floating up in here above grade. And I put all of these on a layer called existing contours. Okay, and this is on a layer called property. This is a simplified layer structure that I did just for this tutorial, but you can structure it however you wish. So I put all of these contours on a layer called existing contours. Alright, and so the first thing I want to do is create a skin over that, or a mesh over top of this contours. So I use the from contours command in the sandbox tools. So when I click on that, it gives me a group that's created in here that allows me to see the slope and the topography and so forth. So if I cut off the existing contours, you can see it a little clearer. In fact, I'll give that a grass texture. How about that? So if I go to vegetation and just say let's make that grass. Alright, so there's the existing site. Now for my purposes, I want to create this as a solid so that I can do before and after and find out how much cut and fill I'm going to need. Do I need to haul dirt away? Do I need to haul dirt in? So in helping me do that, there's a great little plugin from TIG called Cut and Fill. And so what that's going to do is allow me to analyze. I'm going to do before and after, and it'll analyze it for me. But I want to add a skirt to this mesh. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explode this, and then I'm going to come and use this tool here that adds a skirt to the terrain mesh. Okay, sorry, I should not have made that a group. Alright, so the way I'm going to make this a solid is that I'm going to use a plugin by TIG called Cut and Fill. Alright, and what this will do, if I pick that group that we created and put that existing contour on, if I click this skirt tool, it's going to add this skirt going around, okay, which is great because now it's an arbitrary chunk of earth, but when I click on it, I've got a volume here. So that's going to help me in future studies of this. Okay, so that's the first step in creating the site model. Is here's our existing grade. All right, now I've already taken the time to put the house model. When I cut that on, you'll see that I've already chosen. It's going to move a little sluggish because since I'm recording the screen, but I've already placed the house where I want it to be. It's certainly in relation to the 2D drawing down below, but I chose an elevation that I thought would fit both at the street side and the back side of the house. So if I go a little bit more on the side here, you can see that I don't want to have all the water rushing down to the house. I want to have a swale off this garage in here, and then down around back it pretty much fits this walkout basement pretty nicely. You can tell from here that it's coming right down to the walkout portion really nice, and then where these patios are, I'm going to take the dirt that I excavate from here and kind of push it out to spread it out to build up the backyard a little bit. So right now I'm looking at the existing topography, and I want to be able to alter this model to make it work for the next step. So one of the first things that I'm going to do this thing in stages because I'm a builder and I want to know how much dirt's coming out of this thing when I go to excavate for this job, because I've got to think about things like where do I stockpile dirt if I've got extra, or am I going to need dirt brought in. So what I do is I'll take this solid that we've got here, and I'm going to first of all I'm going to put this on a layer called existing site. Okay. And then I'm going to cut this existing site on in here. I'm not not excavated site, existing site. Right here. Okay. So I'm going to put that on a layer called existing site. The first thing I'm going to do is Control C and copy that group. Then I'm going to paste it in place. And for me, I have Alt V is paste in place. So I'm going to paste that in place, and you can see now I have two groups. I'm going to take one of those, and I'm going to change it from existing site to excavated site. So I now have two of the same ones, but one I'm going to destruct the way I want it, and the other one I'm going to keep as my existing site. Alright, and then with this TIG's cut and fill, first of all I'm going to cut off this excavated, let's see, I'm going to cut excavated site, there's existing site, so you can see I have it on each layer. Okay, I'm going to cut off the excavated site, cut on the existing site. Now with TIG's cut and fill program, you have to name it EXTG for the existing site, and we'll get to that later of why I'm doing that, but that's what that one is. Okay, so I'm going to cut the existing site off and cut on the excavated site. Alright, I want to now be able to erase the geometry for where my excavation is going to be. So I'm going to cut off the house for a second and cut on the foundation. Alright, this is the foundation all by itself. Okay, obviously I need to be able to excavate for that, and when I'm doing my foundations I usually go 3 feet around the perimeter to give me room to work to form my foundations, and then I'll take this dirt out and blow that out around the back here and stockpile the rest of the dirt to be used for backfill up in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I had created a group that is the outline of this foundation plus the 3 feet beyond, and it includes these patios, and it goes down to what will be subgrade. Because what I want to do is I want to dig this down. I've got a basement slab going here that's 4 inches thick. Underneath that 4-inch slab I have 4 inches of gravel. Underneath the 4 inches of gravel is my subgrade that I'm going to excavate down to. So I created a solid called excavation reference that you'll see here, and that pretty much goes 3 feet beyond the foundation. I'm going to cut the foundation model back off, and it also includes going past the house for the two patios that I had out there, and you can see how it goes off on an angle. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to cut off, in this case I want to be able to see the geometry here, so I'm going to cut on the under view. I'm going to go to hidden geometry, and you can see all these triangles in that group that are created as a result, and I'm going to be deleting all this geometry around it. And so one of the first things that I'm going to do to make this sort of simple is I'm going to intersect these two together so that I can get a line drawn to help me erase the geometry that I need to erase. So I'm going to pick on both of these two items here, and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to say intersect with model. Okay, intersect faces with, I'll say with selection. Alright, now when I cut off this reference, you can see that it's left this imprint in there. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to edit this group by double clicking on it. Now you can see that all this geometry inside there is, I'll be able to erase it and get rid of everything that I don't want. Whoops, excuse me, that did not work. Let me undo a couple of times. Okay, I've got the foundation reference here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this group here. I'm going to make a copy of this reference. Alright, I'm going to go and edit this group right here, and if I cut off everything else, you're not going to see that portion in there. I'm going to paste in place that group that we just took out of there. Painted it grass, but that's okay. Alright, this is now a part of this site. So I'm going to tell this group to intersect with the model. And when I cut off this excavation reference, once it's done its thing, I'm going to delete out this horrible time of sitting around waiting. Yeah, well, this pretty much sucks. Okay, now that I've got the excavated portion of the site, or the excavation reference in here, existing site here, I want to intersect these two solids so that, in other words, it's just going to take this and cut it out of this solid here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two solids, and I'm going to go over to Solid Tools, and I'm going to say to split. And this is going to basically cut out that excavation for me. So now if I cut off the excavation reference here, if I delete this, I should say, well, let me just make sure that that goes back on to excavation reference. Okay. Now I'm going to delete this portion that came out, and you'll see that there's my excavated site. Okay. So that's at the very least what we're cutting out of there, but I still want to maintain, I want to build the grade up of the dirt that I take out of here. I want to build it up back in here. So I'm going to cut this excavation reference back on because I want to now build this dirt up. It's moving a little sluggish because I'm recording the screen. See, I need to build this dirt up. If you can see that it's kind of hanging out right now. So I want to take the dirt that's out of there and build my grade up to build my backyard up. Alright, so the way I'm going to do that is when you get into hidden geometry here, is I'm going to come in and I'm going to select this group and I'm going to edit it. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is cut on hidden geometry. Alright, and I've got to there's the reference that we're looking at. So I want to come in here and get rid of some of this geometry so that I can build over top of it up to this line. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take the eraser tool. I'm going to, when I do Control R, that hides rest of model for me. So I'm going to be deleting some of these, some of this extra geometry here. You got to be careful not to erase what's down below. So the whole trick of this thing is maintaining it being a solid. So you got to take a lot of care in making sure that you don't delete. Like if I deleted one of those side walls of this solid, it would no longer be a solid that's going to report out of volume. Therefore, I won't get my cut and fill analysis here. So I'm starting out by just erasing the geometry nearby here, and then we're going to rebuild it. And that's part of the beauty of this program. So let me continue on with a little bit farther. Okay, now I'm going to come in and cut this excavation reference, or excuse me, when I Control R, cut it back on. Alright, I want to build that grade up to extend that grade all the way out to the edge of this reference. Alright, so I'm going to delete a bit more geometry there. Alright, and now I'm going to draw a line Since I'm within that group right now, this may be a little bit confusing, but I'm going to start drawing around this perimeter. I'm going to start right at this end point, and I'm going to come across to the other side. Gosh, thing's moving sluggish. Okay. I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to go to here. And I'm going to revolve back around. Alright, I'm going to erase a little bit more of this geometry. And I'm going to draw a line from here to there. Alright, now I'm cutting that back off again. And you can see it's already got some of that flat portion. It's already maintained that flat portion there. So I'm going to erase some of these lines on top of here that don't mean anything anymore. Any unnecessary lines or extra lines will cause this thing not to report as a solid, so we definitely don't want that. We'll get into that in a minute when we use a plugin that's a solid inspector that TomTom created, which is an amazing plugin. Solid Inspector will take a look at any solid that you have that's not reporting out of volume, and it finds the errors in there, and his latest version actually will automatically correct it, which is really, really nice. Okay, we're almost done here. Got a little teeny one, little straggler over here somewhere. Alright, this is where it becomes a little tedious. But I'm going to now create new geometry around this perimeter. In other words, I'm going to be building this dirt up, but I want to now tie it in with the rest of this grade that you're seeing here all the way around. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to actually select every one of these little faces. Now, hopefully somebody will come up with a plugin that will select all these automatically for you. And you may know of one. Hold down Shift, get rid of that, but I do not. So if you know of one, please make a comment on this. I'd be forever grateful because I have spent hours selecting these. Oops. And mistakenly selecting some of these. Try to move, but the 3D mouse is giving me fits because I'm recording my screen at the same time. Okay, catch up. Catch up. Sorry. Gets a bit irritating, but that's what we deal with sometimes when we're recording. I'll let it catch up. Alright, oops. Alright, so I'm going to continue on selecting each of these bounding edges. And you'll see why in just a minute. Okay, I've now selected all the edges that I want to create a new bit of topography for. So I come up here to the same from contours and put this skin on here. Now you're going to notice it creates it as a group. So what I do first is I explode that. And it's also leaving me with extra geometry in here that we do not want. So I'm just going to delete these out. Anything past where I want my limits to be, I'm going to just delete these one at a time just to make sure I'm not deleting something that's important. There's a term for this geometry that's left over there and I can't remember what it is, but alright, so now we can see that I'm taking the dirt that I had over in here and I've kind of blown that out. So just to make things look consistent, I'm going to paint the rest of this topography the same grass that we did before, just to make it look consistent. I could make that a dirt texture if I wanted to, but I'm just keeping this as grass at this point, just so you can see the difference. Okay, let me choose orbit. Maybe that'll slow it down a little bit. Okay, so I'm making all this reflect a real application. Alright, now I'm gonna cut off this reference here because we don't need that anymore. Now you can see we have the excavated site. I'm going to cut off hidden geometry again. I'm left with a few of these lines again. We can clean those up.